Hey everybody, it's Cinnamon Cooney, your Art Sherpa, and today I'm going to show you how you can paint maybe your very first orca whale. So this is a beginner lesson. I really break him down step by step. I explain every technique, every color mix. There's not a ton of colors in this, so he's not super overwhelming in that way. Not a lot of complicated mixes. On the mic is my husband John.
Hello.
So as I'm teaching techniques or giving tricks or hacks to getting something done in acrylic paint, John is going to make sure that the camera is really pointing at what I'm talking about. If you are here and you're in the live chat as this airs, put your questions all in caps. If you're on replay and you have a question, leave it in the comments down below because I check my channel constantly. If you also check the description down below, I like to hide things in there. I've been doing this for like a minute. I like to hide things down there like, oh, I don't know, the materials that we use. We also timestamp this. So each segment, each step is timestamped and it's chapter marked out on YouTube so you can find your spot again. And those timestamps are, they have written instructions that go with them that you can download called a mini book. That comes out so that you can have written step instructions that go with it. So it all sort of matches. There's the description. There's also a link to the website. On the website, you can find 2,000 other videos, resources like the free traceable that you can download and transfer on if you're not into drawing, because I don't expect anyone to do that. I will show you how to draw it, but I don't expect you to draw it. And also a link to our art store where you could buy materials if you felt like you saw something on the show and you were like, oh, I need that. I
Yep.
have that at my art store. So you can buy those there. So lots of stuff for you. I'd like to also let you know that on the brushes, I used a number 20 Raphael Artney Bright, Hog Bristle Bright. I used a Isabay Isacryl number 4 Filbert. I kind of sketched him in. But you wouldn't need to have this one, but I did with the Catalyst 1/4 inch angle, and I used a number 1 Princeton liner. These brushes are suggestions, but in this particular one, because this is focused for beginners, it is focused for your first whale painting, when you're really new at painting. So you don't necessarily have to have the exact brushes I have, though I will always tell you what I have. Let me tell you what the canvases and the paints are, and we'll get painting. So today's fun painting starts on a 9x12, which is really great sometimes to be a little bit smaller when you're starting out because you're not overwhelmed by the canvas. The wish or intention that we're putting out into the ocean is that you find your pod. I think it's important to have your community and be surrounded by people who support you and help you be the best person that you can be. On the palette, the colors are Cad Yellow Medium, Phthalo Blue, Phthalo Green, Mars Black, Titanium White. But again, as a beginner project, as a beginner painting, you could use any of these versions of color that you have. Any yellow you have, any blue you have, any green you have, any black you have, any white you have, and you're still going to get a good result. And I think that that's super important when you're starting out, is to know, okay, I'm gonna get a good painting no matter what. Shall we throw up step 1?
Sure.
Now in step 1, you're probably, unless you're already confident in drawing, maybe you were somebody who was drawing and now you're just trying to paint. But if you weren't drawing before, and a lot of people get turned off to drawing because people around them make silly comments about whether a drawing is good or bad, irrelevant in art, I can't even tell you how much, but it does throw us off our game early on. So I like to provide a traceable, and you would use it at this stage to transfer the image onto your canvas. If you're wanting to learn how to sketch in on a painting like this, then you can follow along with what I'm doing and you can learn a little bit about how you sketch for painting. A little different than how you sketch for drawing. Some similar things like getting overall shape and form and the flow of something, but we're not as detail oriented because we're going to paint over things. Now I'm going to use a small detail brush. This is a 1/4 inch angle catalyst brush, and I'm picking it because it's tiny and it gives me good details. All right, so you're either transferring on the traceable. Don't know how to do that. I have a video for that because I don't expect you to know. But if you want to go along with me now at home, you can do this with chalk, color chalk, so you can change your mind easier. Paint's a little permanent, but what I have found is that you guys tend to see paint a little easier on the canvas. So I'm going to make a little curved line here in my upper right, and then I'm going to do something interesting called a gesture. I'm going to make a little curved line, and that's going to help me kind of get the bend of my orca body better. Sometimes when you're learning how to draw, you don't realize how much the line creates motion or flow or gesture in it. And that's why I would do that. Now I'm going to be getting some scale and space. I'm also going to come on the back side and notice that's pretty light in the paint. I'm not being too like heavy with it because I'm being sketchy here even. Now on the little orca's nose, you want to kind of come forward and bend a little bit because they have a bit of a bend in their body. Come back a little and down. He's going to be well-fed orca, which does make him, well-fed orcas aren't good for the animals in the ocean that are near them.
No, they are not.
If you're an orca, you're awesome. If you're not an orca, other animals in the sea may not celebrate you as much. But we like orcas, so I'm going to make sure he's got a way to swim. So I'm going to make a little curve line here. Kind of curl off like a little fin. Because he needs, you know, he needs a way to be able to steer his body, you know, as you do. And then I also want to make sure that maybe coming up here, we've got a little bit of a little fin, maybe kind of in motion. Because he's being very splashy. Now, I don't really need my line on my mouth to be quite that high, so I'm going to bring this here.
You say splashy, I say terrifying, you know.
Well, it really depends on who you are in the ocean, right? Because, like, if you're
No,
a
it doesn't.
seal or
If you're in the ocean with an orca, you're in trouble.
they are a really cute predator, aren't they? So I'm going to just make sure he's got a nice little mouth here to eat all his little numbing yaminals. And the reason I'm picking blue as my kind of sketching color, he would have an eye like probably right around here. I might move it later depending on positioning. Sometimes you want to get on the mouth and maybe be a little bit back further. So if I don't like a decision I made, I just kind of just paint it blue. It doesn't really matter. These are just little sketches to sort of think about things. Put the eye back a little bit and just finding my place for it. And then I know I'm going to have my little white there. And a little black there. Just enough to know where my orca is. So you have the traceable, you have the finished version of this that you've downloaded and transferred on. I'm kind of thinking that out. And sketching is a process of kind of observing and then also just like feeling through. So sometimes you'll change your mind. That's really normal, a little different experience than when using traceable. Now I want this to be dry so that when I come paint it in, I'm not smearing. And this was a little bit wet, so I'm going to dry it with my hairdryer. If you're watching at home, here's the trick. When I dry and you dry, pause me. Whether it's live, whether it's a premiere, whether it's a replay, you pause me, and then you don't push play on me until you're ready to go. A lot of you guys feel like you've got to paint with me in real time, brushstroke by brushstroke, but in actuality, you don't need to do that at all. And it's important to remember to pause me and rewind me anywhere you need to do that. I am here to help you on your time. So it's not a keep up game. All right, so push pause on me, and when you're dry, push play, and we'll be painting together. So now that I have them sort of loosely sketched in, I'm going to take a number 20 Raphael Argeny brush. It's a 1-inch bright, and this particular brush head is a hog bristle. But for this part, you don't need to have this exact brand of brush or even this exact brush. Like you could have a synthetic or hog bristle. I just am choosing the bright so it will let me paint loosely. I'm going to get my brush lightly damp, and I'm going to go ahead and, interestingly enough, I'm going to load up on some white paint. You can see I'm working it into the bristles, and I'm going to grab just a smidge of blue, and I can come along his edge here. And this is just so that my background is nice and tight to the object. And then just brush out a little bit of blue and white. Much lighter at this corner. I'm just brushing this in. This is a very energetic and loose painting. And what I mean by loose is that I'm not having to worry about the kind of attention to detail that a high realism requires. It's a little more blue than I want, so I just come get a little more white. I wiped off on my paper towel. I do want it a little bluer under him, so just adding a little more And you can see just even the energy of these brush strokes. Things are loosely mixed on the canvas, right? Right over my words, white and blue. I can even come and mix a little bit of my green and blue together and add some little more color there. A little bit darker down here. And a lot of times it's just about catching a lot of nice paint in it and being expressive. One of the things that I will sometimes do is paint a little further back on an object that I've sketched in, and that's just so I can always paint it bigger. This is just a nice trimming time. And this is kind of layer one. We're just getting that first layer of paint in. And I'm kind of coming back with some white and loosely painting it in. So I am trying to get kind of a streaky effect. I may come up here above my fin, and I'm going to grab a little white and curve these brush strokes a little bit so there's some energy that implies the splash. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does.
Maybe a little bit blue. And so this is where we're going to get this. This is that first step. I'm going to rinse out. We're going to not dry it, but we're going to call this a step.
All right, we can do that.
Not dry it though. Call it a step. Step 3, I've rinsed out my brush, and I'm going to take a little bit of my blue and green and black together, and I'm going to come down here, and it's going to be much darker. See how dark this is? It's a big color change going from these light colors to the dark color, and I'm going to do kind of light little brush strokes coming up. Still pretty loosely painted though. So black, blue, and green together. Blue, green, black. Little short strokes kind of coming up into this lighter blue. We're just making that sense of crazy ocean happening. Just short little brush strokes. Just getting that background in. That's pretty good. We've got a nice background sort of working in. You know, we know our whale friend is, you know, kind of jumping out at us. Kind of coming up and out. I'm rinsing my brush and putting it to the side. I do now want to dry it, right, before I do the next, because I kind of want things to layer on top and be visible. So let's dry this. So things are pretty messy at this stage and should be a little bit messy at this stage. I'm going to take a brush called a filbert. That's a rounded brush. This is a number 4 Isabey acrylic filbert. You could use a bright or round for this next part though. I just like these brushes for their edges, but it's not one of those things where it's necessary to use exactly what I have. I'm going to come here and paint in my fin along the edge of the brush with just black. Just getting some black on there. Got some nice little energy going on that. Coming along this edge. A little bit coming back. And again, this is just sort of that first layer. So we're just painting in our field of color. Now our fin will be kind of dark on dark, but we're going to come back and use a little bit of value and water splash and different things to kind of pull some differential out here so that we can see that it's different than what it is around. Kind of a little forward bump. This is just layer 1. I do want the paint to cover it. I don't have to be that much of a perfectionist with it. It's okay. Now I'm going to take a little bit of my blue over here with my black, kind of wipe out the extra paint, and I'll go ahead and get a little bit of white into that mix. Maybe a little more black than that. A little bit in shadow. So it's kind of a gray, because we're not going to put the white in right away. It's looking pretty good. All right, let's call that a step. Now we're going to work back on our background again because we've got some whale in here. We see some whale. We're aware of it. I'm going to keep using the same brush. And I'm going to come up here and I'm going to make little short brush strokes with some white. It's okay if it picks up a little gray or blue or color. These are short little brush strokes. Get a little blue on there. Just a little bit of bright white. And if you do have heavy body paint, what's nice is that you can do it kind of thickly. So you get some energy in that as well. A little bit of blue and green together. Loosely mixed. And what I mean by loosely mixed is you'll notice that the paint is not thoroughly mixed together to uniform color on that brush, but it's mixed as it goes onto the canvas.
Gotcha.
Kind of coming back, little short brush strokes. So phthalo blue, phthalo green. If I want to have a little white, I wipe off my brush and I can come back with a little bit of white in there. Loosely mixed again. Can have a little bit of green. Let's come up here. Again, the blue and green. Loosely mixed. Adding a little more white. Pick up some blue. And then as we come back, the water can start splashing back this way because you want it to feel like he's breaching. Lots of ways to paint the way something feels. One of the big tools in our art box to do that is often directionality and roughness of stroke, the types of marks that we're making. By making rough strokes, by making rough marks, I'm really allowing there to be some energy. Now I'm kind of coming along doing this a little light around the tail. I can always put that edge back that I went back up on the tail. Doesn't bother me. Doesn't have to bother you yet at all. If it does really bother you, you can always rinse out your brush. Get some damp water on it and erase. See, so it's not that hard to erase. I'm going to come here where I had some blue and some black together. Blue and black, and I'm going to just add some of that energy to this part of the canvas, kind of splashing back that way. I'm getting some white, getting blue and black. You can see it's very loosely mixed.
I like how this makes the ocean like seem scary as like it's intense.
It's like,
yeah, exactly.
yeah, it's what he's doing. He's splooshing. He's splooshing up at you. He's going, gotcha. And you're in, and the you is going, oh, you got me. But it could also be
no.
like he's having so much fun that he's just splashing up, right? Come get just some phthalo blue into that. You can see that's pretty powerful in the mix. Again, just very short little brush strokes. Get a little blue and white. Come in here. Little blue, green, and white. Now, white's one I'm going to go through a lot of on this particular painting, and that's okay. Little short marks. Come get a little blue. Maybe come over here and make some little marks coming up here. And I really do mean little marks. That's what we're doing. We're just making these little energetic marks. Get some just blue. I love the blue in here. In this, there's a chromatic black about the blue. And if you've never heard that term before, chromatic black. So it's a value of black, how dark black is, and will look a little black to the eye without actually having black in it. So for this painting, the blue is so dark that it feels almost like a chromatic black.
Gotcha.
I'm coming back with a little black and blue here for the bottom. Loosely mixed and kind of blending out on my surface. Adding little short marks of black up into it. And that's pretty fun. Now I do want to dry everything, so I don't want to be dragging it out. And I'm going to want to put out more blue and more white, but I don't necessarily need to do that quite yet. So let me dry everything. You put me on pause. When we come back, I'm going to show you what you do next. So now I'm going to want to start shaping him out a little more specifically. I'm going to keep using my filbert because it's a nice brush that I have a lot of control. You know, I've got my angle brush, I've got this brush, and they're both good for this. So if I'm not getting a good result out of my filbert, I can always switch to my angle. I put out my titanium white and blue again, and I'm going to get a dark blue-gray, pretty dark, and I'm going to come under this little nose and kind of, not really so much black line as just begin to create the separation between the water and the whale. The water and the whale. Brush up a little bit thicker. I don't want this paint to dry, so I'm going to take my brush and wipe it out. But I don't rinse it, and the reason I don't is because I want a little bit of the pigment that's in there left in the brush so that it'll blend, but I don't want so much that it overstains what I'm doing. And I'm going to come into here, wet into wet. That means the paint I'm working in is wet, and the paint I've added is wet, and I'm going to kind of blend these two together. Brushing upwards. And then I'll just keep adding a little bit of white. Wiping off on my paper towel. I love my paper towel.
Just helps you keep control of the brush and how
Helps
much to
me keep
load and stuff.
control of the brush, how much pigment is on it, what's happening. You can see I'm just getting lighter and lighter as I go up into him. That next thing, and I can blend between these two areas, just sort of going over it with my brush. And this is just sort of this idea that we can blend off the canvas. We can create mixes off the canvas and create mixes on the canvas. I'm going to rinse out thoroughly, as you do. I'm going to get some just black. Come in and sort of work that little nose out. I love the second coat of black because a lot of times, you know, if I'm going and I've got either too much water, I'm using an expensive paint, the black really needs a couple coats to be the deep, dark, dark that I want. Doesn't take as much to cover, and it's going to let me create my blends a lot easier. So I'm just brushing this out, the black up here. Come back just a little bit. I know I've got splashes that will be coming up into him. I just want to, you know, have that go there. So I'm just giving room for splashes. Now where I want some gray, I'm going to come into my blue and white and black mix over here, which starts to give me some gray. And I'm going to begin to, that's that a little more white. I want more gray than that. I'm going to blend right into my black that's painted out. And I'm working wet into wet again, aren't I? And that's just giving me sort of a soft result. This works because the paint underneath is a little bit wet and the paint in my hand is a little bit wet. I just wiped off on my palette and I'm going to come in and mix these two together again, kind of getting a slightly lighter gray, and I'm going to kind of come across here and also sort of blend in. Now if it was dry, then I would just be dry brushing, and guess what? That would be okay too. Just give you a more dry brush look. But right now I kind of like that wet into wet blending that I'm getting. And I'm going to add a little gray to the midway on the dorsal here. Kind of implying a little light hit in that dorsal. Let's get a little more blue into the mix, into my gray. I like that. This is now almost a little more of a dry brushing because there's not as much wet black there. But you can see I'm still getting a good result. So it's okay how it's going. I can wipe off on my paper towel. Come back with black anywhere I need to deepen it. And I'm mixing. What you'll see me doing here is like, notice that I'll come in and kind of cross hatch and blend through this way too. Kind of mixing these little brush strokes, creating a little bit of a visual, loose, expressive disturbance there. So this energy in the water and the energy in the well is similar. Super similar. Let's dry everything and come back and I'm going to show you what you do next. You're going to love it. So you've noticed I've donned my glasses. These are my vision enhancers. It's important that whenever you're doing something like an eye or any kind of detail that you make sure that you can see what it is you're doing well. You may not need vision enhancers, you may, but what I want you to do is just be mindful. Am I seeing this well enough to paint it? I'm going to use a detail brush as well. This is a #1 Princeton liner. You don't have to have this exact brush. You just want something that will give you a good detail. And I'm going to come in here and I'm going to get into my gray. I've taken some white and I'm adding some into my gray, and I'm getting kind of a nice dark gray. So here's the tip of the nose. I'm going to come back, oh gosh, at least to the midway point, right, on him. And I'm going to do a little seed. close to the mouth. And it's going to be like a little sesame seed up and down. All right, see how that creates that little area of the eye in there? I go a little bigger than I need. This is a trick of mine to get like a really good result. And it should leave the eye inside, right? Quite black. Gonna rinse out. I'm gonna get a little black now. I'm going to paint my little sesame seed inside that little area. Come along here and leave a little slip of gray. Isn't that wild how that works? If you need to put a little gray back, you can. Let's come above. Back into the black. I'm just leaving a little bit there. These are like, sometimes it's really hard to get fine lines. It just is challenging, but if you come in and you slip it out that way. Now I've rinsed out and I'm getting a little bit of white, and I just want to make sure there's just a little bit on my brush. A little bit of white. A little touch at the corner. And a little bit of a shine reflection in the eye. Isn't he cute? I can also come along here and at the top of the eye, maybe a little bit of kind of a highlight. Blend that in a little bit. And then if I want to get back into my black, as you do, I can always kind of come in and shade that in. So that's what I'm dancing with, is just trying to get my little grays and blues and things. Just so that we can see that there's a little bump out that's his eye. And this is probably for you as a beginner, maybe like the most frustrating part of doing this painting is figuring out how to get the eye. But one of the things that I do is I really do teach beginners how to do eyes. And this is your first, maybe more complex eye where you've thought about the different values and the shading and the highlights that can be involved in that. The big thing I want you to realize is that if it gets away from you and you find yourself feeling super frustrated, guess what you can do?
What's that?
You can dry everything, paint it black, dry it again, and start over. That's okay to a point. And the reason I say to a point is sometimes you guys will get so lost in a particular technique or concept that you miss the whole painting, frustrate yourself, and give up. So once a do-over, okay. Twice a do-over is okay. But if you find yourself doing over and doing over and doing over, stop everything and come into a group there on Facebook. Show us where you're at and get some encouragement from everyone else. Because sometimes what it is you've gotten in your own head. You've got the yips going. And it's not that there's anything wrong with your eye. You've just given yourself the yips.
Yep.
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 Yep. Okay. Let's do another little step and I'm going to continue on. I may actually want to keep my visit enhancers on for just a second so I can see everything really well. I'm going to come up here and add my little whale dot. I don't know. I'm going to keep using this particular little brush because it just gives me a little bit of control and just make sure I like how it is in size and everything. I think that's pretty good. I think that's all right. I'm going to go ahead and get a little more white on my brush, and I may just brighten some of the highlights in the eye because nice. Rinse out. put aside. Grab my filbert. Let's get a little more white on here. And this isn't blending now, right? Wet into wet. This is sort of coming in over, glazing. And then what you see me doing here is kind of a dry brushing, which means there's not a lot of water on my brush. The canvas underneath is dry. I'm putting the paint out in a pretty dry application and allowing the canvas to show through. So that's how I'm getting that effect. I just wiped off on a towel to control it, and I'm going to come here under here, adding a little touch of paint and dry brushing. Dry brushing is a good skill to learn as a new painter because it's an alternative to blending, and sometimes we've got to do it. All right. Now we're going to come here and we're going to dry brush a very light gray. I don't even mind getting some blue into my light gray. If I'm having trouble getting the load, I can always wipe off on my paper towel. I'm going to come here and just sort of scumble or dry brush with my filbert. This is still my number 4 filbert. Just a little bit of this little highlight that could be here, okay? Because these are little shiny creatures. They think they're happy, so we're going to say they're happy, even though other animals are not happy to see them sometimes. If you weren't aware of this, is killer whales are very successful hunters, and they tend to play with their food. So
very successful.
So if you were in the food chain where they were interested in you, you would not bless them. You would not love them that much. I'm going to come along the back here and also just dry brush a little more. Kind of coming back because we know we're going to have some water splashing down more in a more concerned way. I'm going to dry brush right here. I know I'm coming back with some splashy marks, but this will actually be of use to me. You know, where I'm trying to get some little splashes. And here at the back of the fin. But I don't want to come onto the fin because I want the fin to still be separate. So we got a little dry brush in there. Above here, let's do another little dry brush here. Dry brushing is kind of a scruffy, scumbly technique. And again, notice I don't have a lot of paint on my brush and I'm just kind of giving myself a little highlight. Maybe again at my fin. All right, let's look back at that. If anything feels too much, what do? We just dry brush back a little black. Right, I come on my paper towel, I get a little black paint, come on my paper towel, and I can very easily, look at how I can easily knock that back, can't I? So you can have as much control as you want. You just want your dry brush to be dry. So highlight there is looking good. Now, let's call it a new step. Step 9, we're so fine. And we're going to start adding some splashing and some wilding to the water and to what's around it. I'm going to get back into my filbert. And interestingly enough, I'm going to get a little of my yellow. I don't mind if some of my green gets in there. And I'm going to get a little white onto here. I'm going to add just a little yellow. And we might want to be just a little bit, not too much. I'm going to come up to the top of him. We might want to zoom out because I'm going to dance this around a bit. And I'm wiggling my brush. It's the filbert. I'm just wiggling it. And I'm making like little messy marks. See how they're messy? This is energy. Maybe a little white in there, a little messy marked white. This is like talking about some of the splashier splashes. And it also lets us sort of imply that there's maybe some light on the water. Wipe, wipe. Maybe here on his little chin with that little of that. I like that right there. Just a little, not too much. This is sort of fun. We're being playful. You know, got great water. Now I'm going to get some white. just with my brush, all kind of loosely, I'm going to talk about splashes. This is like rough white water coming up. Little upward marks. And we're just doing this real rough. My brush is pretty dry. It's fairly loaded with paint. You can kind of see me coming around the edge here. And then I'm just roughly pushing that out. And that's kind of how I'm trying to talk about the splash, right? Without actually splattering. Touch the canvas a little bit, and that can kind of imply some splashies. Just a corner of my little brush, right? Can really be good for that. And just little plops of paint. See how we're making little splashy marks?
I do. I think that's really nice. It makes a lot of gives a lot of motion to the water.
In what's called, the term that we use to most often describe this type of painting is painterly. In other words, I'm not hiding what the medium is. I'm leaning into the brushstrokes. I'm leaning into the texture. I'm kind of embracing it.
Yeah.
I feel like I got a little tripped on my little fin there. And I can just come back with a clean brush if you'll remember. And erase it out if I want it to be a little different. Or I can paint it back black. So it's never, ever, ever a problem. All right. I am going to get, I think, my detail brush here. And let's call it a different step because we're going to really be changing the technique. All right, so I've got a liner brush, and I'm going to come along here, and I'm going to load it up with quite a lot of white. And I'm going to make little splashy little lines and marks. These are sort of ups and downs and dot, dot, dot. Look at that. Ups and downs and dot, dot, dot. Sometimes we feel like our first water effect painting or our first it feels so overwhelming, and it's hard to know that there are fun and beginner friendly ways to get into these ideas. I'm going to come along the front of the dorsal fin here. I'm going to make a little line, a dash, little fine lines. That's like a reflection, isn't it? Let's come here and also go dot, 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 dot. Splashes. See, went dot, 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 dot. That feels like splashing up seafoam. Going up the painting with that. I can be very, very, very expressive with it. Can come down here into this part of the belly and also be very expressive with it. Up over his little fins. Who doesn't love that? We just love it, don't we? A little wiggly brush. Look how my brush is just wiggling and dancing. Just a wiggle, and I connect with the canvas and I release from the canvas to get this effect. So I'm not touching the canvas the whole way. I'm not trying to keep constant contact. I'm trying to touch and release to get a little splash effect. If I touch stronger, then I get bigger marks. Maybe a little mark right there at the edge of the fin, and then coming up along the front. Gives a little reflection, doesn't it? Little splashes that way. Like I pushed some paint up and it made an upward splash. I'm going to go back and forth, and that makes kind of like water running down. Isn't that interesting? How it gives that effect. Because water runs off of them. And I can always come in and brighten my little spot if I'm like, oh, you could use a little brightening. All right, so some nice splashes. He's coming out. He's got so much energy. Doesn't he have nice energy?
Does he say pop up? Hello.
Little touches here to kind of talk about the little reflection in his nose. Look how reflective his little nose is, huh? And this can have a little reflection on it too. Tapping up and down, tapping. Those feel like little splashes, don't they, when they tap up and down? All right. Nothing left to do but give it a signature.
Wow, that came together so nice.
Didn't it come together so nice? So
It did.
Maybe this is your first whale painting. You know, that can be like very daunting. You've done some other stuff. You've been kind of brave, but you're like, man, I really wanted to paint a whale, but it's hard to paint animals. He's kind of an easy shape. Just around. And that's the thing, is that sometimes we get it in our head that something is hard, right? When it's just unfamiliar. Once you've done this once, I bet you would go out into the world and do so many more splashing whales. Splashing, energetic, fun whales. When we come back, I'm going to show you what you do next. Oh my gosh, guys, thank you for taking the time to do this today. If this is your first whale painting, because you saw the it's your first whale painting title and thumbnail and all that, let me know in the description down below. You know, what was it like for you? How excited are you? What do you love about whales? I love to be in a conversation with you. I do read my comments. I check them all the time, whether this video was just dropped or it was dropped years ago, depending on when you watch it, because YouTube is like that. I check my channel every single day. If you'd like to share your finished painting with us, there is a group on Facebook you can share on Instagram or Pinterest or Twitter or TikTok. I'm in all those places. You can share it with me. We even have a Discord, which is another nice place to chat and share art. So whatever social media platform is your preference to share. If you'd like to support us, we have a patron group that you can join. Patrons get a chance to name the paintings. They get to suggest names and we vote on those. So that's kind of exciting for them. And they get extra videos and vlogs. They'll get one all that we're going to talk about after this, like after we record it. So that's a fun thing. They get a bunch of extra stuff and you help us support creating free art content for people around the world. We've been doing this for how many years now?
Almost 10, I think.
Yeah, I'm getting kind of good at it, I hope. I'm getting good at it.
Yeah.
On the website, if you go to theartsherpa.com, please go by the website, sign up for the newsletter, check out our free resources. I've got traceables for downloads. If you don't want to be drawing, I've got the traceables. There's thousands. And I mean, because we've been doing it for 10 years, like 2,000 other videos of art that you can do, many of which are whales. If you're like into aquatic animals, I've got a whole Shark Week. I did a whole Shark Week when we watched Shark Week together and we painted Shark Week. There's even a Sharknado in there, which I know is sort of tangential, but it's kind of related, right? It's very funny. So if you didn't know there was a Sharknado, be like, wait, where's the Sharknado video? Actually, I think if you search Sharknado, the Art Sherpa,
Yep.
I come up. Pretty sure. You can share your results in the Facebook group and all online. And the other thing to do is realize like that we just appreciate you and really grateful for you. And we love to hear from you. So just know that your time with me matters. I want you to be good to yourself, be good to each other, and I'm going to see you at an easel really soon. Bye bye.